2015 February financial training. This is the training that we provide to the new area financial coordinators. And the purpose of the training is to discuss the inflows and outflows of money post-unification. So things have changed a little bit since we were pre-unification versus post-unification in terms of how money is deposited into our accounts, as well as how payments are expenses are paid, checks are written. And so I'm going to discuss what those differences are. Then I'm also going to discuss the forms. So the forms that we use, it's a communication tool that we use with the areas and MKP USA. And the forms essentially provide us, that is MKP USA, with guidance in terms of how to credit your money, or who to write the checks to, where to code the expense reimbursements. And so we'll spend some time doing that. And then, time permitting, I'll also show you some real-life examples. So we'll go out and take a look at some of the programs that we're using to give you a better feel for what you'll be doing going forward. So, inhaling. So, post-unification, this is what it looks like. NWTA deposits. So that existed pre-unification. This is the nwta.mkp.org website. This is where men go to learn more about NWTA, and they can make a deposit, they can register, and they can also pay the full tuition now. Second method of receiving money is PayPal. The third method is via the bank, and in this case it's Chase Bank, and it's you can use a teller, you can go visit an ATM, or if there is no Chase Bank nearby, then we will actually send you a check scanner so that you don't have to mail the checks in. You can actually just scan the checks on your desktop. The fourth method is journaling. And so this is in QuickBooks, where you'll see money being transferred into your account. An example of this would be membership payments. So when men are making membership payments, 50% goes back to the local area. And so on a monthly basis, you'll see a credit to your account representing the 50% of that donation that was made by your respective area's warrior. And then lastly, there's the Enhanced Center Payment Gateway, which is a credit card processing engine. And that is available to you and your designate. If you get a credit card, especially around an NWTA weekend like we're doing in San Diego this weekend, I'm going to get a host of credit cards come Monday. I can actually log in using this system to process those credit cards. Exhaling, money going out. So for check requests and expense reimbursements, we use a very powerful online program or software provider called Bill.com. And I will walk you through that a little bit later on in the presentation. We also utilize PEX cards, which are prepaid spending cards. And the idea behind this is that we want to, we really don't want our guys using money out of their own pocket to fund food, supplies, materials for a weekend or for a training. So we've issued these PEX cards. Each area will have 2 or 3 of them. And the idea is that they're prepaid spending cards that we hand out in advance of a training, so these men can use this to make their purchases as opposed to their own money. And finally, another way that money flows out would be through journal entries. An example of this are the support fees that we pay around an NWTA. So historically, we had to write MKP USA a check or send a interbank transfer to transfer. Nowadays, once you've done an NWTA and you submitted your weekend reports, MKP USA will send you an invoice, and then correspondingly, absent any objections from the local area, then they'll just debit the corresponding amount from our accounts. So as I mentioned earlier, NWTA deposits. So this is a public site where men can go in, learn more about the NWTA. They can register, they can pay their deposit, and they can also pay the full tuition. When a man does one of these activities, an email is sent out to you. And I want to make sure that you two are on this list. It's important for you to know when men are making payments given your respective roles in your communities. So just, can you give me a show of hands? Are you receiving these emails? Do you know?
I'll be honest, Scott, I don't know.
Okay, no worries. I'll check after this call to make sure you're on your respective areas list to receive these notifications.
Okay. I added myself to the list.
Okay. Now, alternatively, some areas, they've actually set up an alternative payment portal on their websites, PayPal button, which I'll talk about in a minute. So for men making, registering or making a deposit or paying their full tuition, they can do it via the nwta.mkp.org website. Alternatively, areas have created buttons on their websites to provide an alternative method for our participants to make the payment. So speaking of PayPal, we use PayPal buttons now to collect fees for training and for NWTA events and event registration. We don't use PayPal buttons for donations. Every area should have, be redirecting folks that want to make a donation to the Unified Area Donation page. And I checked before the call, and I believe your respective areas have been set up on that Unified Area Donation page. With respect to PayPal, areas are using PayPal buttons to collect, again, tuition, or if people want to make a contribution on behalf of another man, or they want to pay their staff fees, or they want to pay the LT1, ST1. That's what we're using PayPal buttons for now. Now, one big distinction I want to make at this point, or difference that is that prior to unification, we had set up our PayPal buttons, that is locally, so that we received notification of when a man was making a payment. Post-unification, however, we've deactivated that notification process. And the reason for that is that all the areas are using a single button account called the button account. And that's where all of our payments are going to. So if I flip that switch on, then you'd get emails, but you'd get notifications of whenever anybody was making a payment. So 98% of the emails you received from PayPal would apply to a payment that was not for your area. So it would create a lot of noise, white noise in your email box. So we thought we're going to turn that off. So an alternative method and to see who has paid what, and I just tested this before I jumped on the call, is you can log on to our PayPal account, download the history, and then sort it by your area's buttons. And soup to nuts, it takes about 90 seconds. And I can show you how we do that later on, time permitting. But that's a very effective tool to use if you want to figure out who has paid, say, in the last 3 or 4 days. Beyond that, all those transactions would have been loaded in QuickBooks, and you can use your QuickBooks to review who has paid what and when. Making deposits. So when you receive checks, what we need for you to do is right on the back, for deposit only, put our bank account number on there. So MKP's bank account is here reflected on the screen. If you don't have a stamp, I will send you a stamp. Just let me know by email, and I can send you a nice little deposit stamp that you could use, especially when you're making a large number of deposits. It's helpful. It avoids cramping up your hand. If you don't have an ATM or Chase Bank nearby, then we will actually give you a scanner. And so, Jim, I'm going to work with you on that and getting you a scanner and getting it set up. Alternatively, you can mail it, and here's a mailing address on this screen. It's not necessarily to write all this stuff down because this presentation is going to be available after the presentation. And also, all the information you're seeing here is available on our finance homepage, your go-to guide for getting information. Any questions so far?
No, I'll take a stamp whenever you get a chance.
Okay. So, Jim, this is the deposit form I was referring to.
Right.
So this is a form that we need for each area to submit when they're making a deposit. This form lets us know where to apply those funds and to what class. And so on every deposit that you make, even if it's 1 check or 100 checks, we need for you to complete this form. It's available on our finance homepage, and it's downloadable. It's an Excel document. And you basically walk in and just enter the amount of the check, the first and last name of the man on the check or the organization on the check, the last 4 digits of the check number, the accounting code, the class event, and then any notes that you think we should know.
Okay.
So,
question.
Yes.
The accounting codes that we have there, they're the ones that we're going to use most of the time.
Correct.
Okay. The other question I have, what's class?
Class is a training or event.
Okay.
So For every event or training that your area has planned for this year, we've created a corresponding class in QuickBooks. And the reason behind that, the primary reason, is that when you run your P&L reports for your area, you'll be able to see the P&L by training, by event.
Right.
So a class will be an NWTA coupled with the month and the year. So
Right.
San Diego's holding an NWTA this weekend. So our class would be NWTA 0215 under
Right.
San Diego.
Okay.
Same thing would be if you're doing a Mondo Zen, an LT1, ST, IGFT training. Each of those trainings and events will have a class. And in some case areas, if you're having a community gathering, that can be a class as well. So anything that you want us to track from a P&L standpoint, we'll work with you to create a class.
Okay.
So on each deposit report, you're going to see a drop down for the accounting code. So there's no need to memorize all these wonderful codes that we use on the back end. It's actually a drop down, and you'll select one of those.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So at this point, I want to make two clarifications. So if in fact you're receiving cash, so let's say that 5 men give you $10 each as a general donation during an I group, and you don't have a Chase Bank nearby, what you're going to want to do is, what I recommend is that you keep the cash and then send us a check for $50. Okay. And then when you put on the deposit form here, you're going to actually put down submitted by Jim Nash, but you're going to do it 5 times.
Right.
And then you're going to put the same check number because it's one check. Then you're going to put the accounting code of general donation. There won't be a class event because this is a general donation.
Right.
And then under notes, that's where you tell me, okay, this was made by John Doe. This one was made by Scott McGregor. This one was made by John Levitt. And then I'll make those notations in our Civi CRM so that those men get credit for that donation.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
A secondary clarification I want to make here is that sometimes we receive donations from a company, or a company is matching an employee's donation. When you get one of those checks, the name on the check needs to be the name of the company itself. So you can put Acme Incorporated. Then over under notes, you would say, okay, this is actually made on behalf of Scott Ryder.
Okay.
And the reason we do that is that if I ever need to go back and search and find it in Chase actually shows me a picture of the check. So when I'm looking at the check is the name on the check. So I'm looking for a check by Acme Incorporated. Okay. Now, when I load these donations into our Civi CRM donor database, I'll actually make the donation under John Doe, Scott Ryder, and indicate that it was via check by Acme Incorporated. But at least from this standpoint, I need to know the name on the check.
Okay.
The Enhanced Center Payment Gateway. So this is a tool that we use to process credit cards. So again, after a weekend or before a weekend, or if a manager says, I want to make a $1,000 donation to the community, actually the donations are handled via our Unified Area Donations page. But if he wants to make a $500 payment for Mondo Zen coming up, you could use this tool to make that payment. So let me take a break. From our presentation and show you what that looks like. So you're going to hear me refer to the finance homepage over and over and over again. This is what I'm referring to. So this has a number of links, access, resources that'll help you do your job.
Right.
Okay. So this page is available to anybody that is in MKP Connect. Okay. Except for the uber secret shaded document down here. This shaded box is only available to those folks that have, quote unquote, the credentials to see this respective area. The reason for that is that this is where we keep all of our logons and passwords for the QuickBooks, the Bill.com, the PEC spending card, and the Enhanced Payment Gateway. So for the Enhanced Payment Gateway, when you're on this site, don't need to remember your local area's login and password. You can click on this link right here, and it will bring up a document that'll share with you what your respective password is. So let's see here. I'll use San Diego as an example.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back. So I'll type in San Diego, and then our area's password. And so then it takes me to San Diego's basically payment center. And to apply a payment, I click on this, and then your area will be there. It'll be Heartland, or New York, or LA, whatever your respective area dialing in from. And then here's where you enter the payer's information. And down here, you can click what the purpose is. So all of your events, all of your classes for 2015 have been loaded into this system. And so in this case, I could say this is a staff fee, or this is a participant payment for a February NWTA, and then so forth. And then you hit submit. And the next page will give you a field to load in the credit card number and actually process the payment. So this is the enhanced payment gateway. Now each area has their own login and password. One thing that I recommend is that you use your own login and password, because these are personalized for each area. If you just use San Diego's login password to process a payment from Heartland, you're going to be applying a payment to San Diego's NWTA. But if you log in under Heartland, what you'll see is all your classes and events that have been set up for 2015. Okay. So now we're going to talk about outflows. So check requests. Check requests are used for deposits for training, site, rent, P.O. box. In rare cases, I've seen checks go out for MOS, where in some areas they are basically shopping at local farmers markets and can only use cash. And so they've asked for us to advance them the $1,200 that you're going to spend on food. But these are basically check requests that are, or expenses that are incurred, or payments that are being made before the expenses incurred. Excuse me. Process is you fill out the check request form, you send it to mkp@ignitespot.com. IgniteSpot is our accountants, and they're based out of Utah, and you'll get the check within 2 weeks. This is what the check request form looks like. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We need to know the area, the event, the vendor information. We also need to know who's submitting it to us. So if I have questions, who can I pick up the phone and call? And then the date that it was submitted. And then you put in the service, the accounting code, and again, this will be a drop-down menu for you, the corresponding class that the expense is tied to, and then the amount. And then when you're done, you email this report to mkp@ignitespot.com, and please copy the Scotts. And that would be Scott Ryder and Scott McGregor. MK IgniteSpot and the Scotts support one another. So if you have a question about what the status of a check request is, or an amount that was paid, or where it was mailed to, you can always just email it to Scotts, and we can always reference this prior email in our research.
Right. So that you do one of these for each payment you make out.
Correct.
Request a check for. Okay. Individual. Okay.
Right. So again, this is submitted before the expenses incurred. This should tie to your budget. This is very important. Whenever we get a check request or an expense reimbursement, we're actually looking to see if the expenses are tying to a budget. If not, it's a red flag for us. And so we'll pick up the phone and call you and say, can you give us some more information about this? And the reason for that is that the budgets that were submitted at the beginning of the year were basically the area's spending agreement. So this is what you told Scott, this is what we're going to spend money on this year. And so we're trying to support you in that endeavor. And so you basically authorized, when checks come in that are according to the budget, we're going to go ahead and approve them as requested by the area. If it's not, then you're asking us, raise your hand, check in with us to see, okay, why are we spending this when it's not budgeted? And so we're here to support you in that endeavor. Again, include every accounting code and class event for every transactions. And in the rare cases, the payment may not be the vendor, so we've actually added another field here where you can include that person's name or that company's name. Did you have a question?
What about expenses you don't know ahead of time?
That's fine. This is being the first year, we're going to work through that together.
Okay.
So if an example might be, and this is, I'll use a personal example, one of our leaders wants to do a training, and he announced that a month ago. So It was not in the original budget. So what I need to do is submit a budget amendment.
Okay.
And it's a separate document. It's a very simple document. It's a Google Sheets available online. A link to it's provided on our finance homepage. And it takes about 5 minutes to complete. And so you would put in the budget for that new training, and then you send it to Scott. And that way we'll basically add it as an addendum to your 2015 budget, so that when requests come in, we do have a reference point.
Okay.
Leader fees. So historically, leader fees were paid via checks. So when I co-led a weekend or led a weekend, I'm not a leader, but I'm using it as a hypothetical example. I'd show up on Sunday and send in my weekend report, and I would get my check for the weekend. We're not doing that anymore, except in those rare cases where a man wants to receive his check, insists on receiving his check on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is we've set everybody up on direct deposit. But before we can actually pay them, we need to make sure that the leaders have actually submitted a W-9. And so we're moving away from the paper process. Now we have an online form. So if you have a leader that has not completed a W-9, we need to redirect them to this website. It's on MKP Connect. A link to it is provided on our finance homepage. And this is where they'll input the information. And it's stored in a secure / encrypted file. And then we'll use this at the end of the year to process our 1099s.
Okay.
Expense reimbursements. So for those men that are actually paying out of pocket for something and need to get reimbursed, they're buying a coffee urn, or they're buying miscellaneous items, or buying wood for a weekend, or you come up with your own example. This is what we use to provide reimbursement to that expense. We need two things. We need a copy of the receipt. And when I say digital copy, I'm referring to either a picture or a scanned copy of the receipt.
Okay.
And then the completed expense reimbursement form. And then those two information are then emailed to MKP at Ignite Spot, and you're copying the Scots on that email. And the reimbursement check should arrive within 2 weeks.
Okay.
So here's an example of the expense reimbursement form. And what you'll find, it looks similar to the check request and the deposit. You provide the pay information, the description, the vendor, the accounting code, the class that we need to code the expense to, and then the amount. And again, this is submitted after the expense is incurred. It should tie to your budget. And we always need you to include the accounting code and the class so that we can code it accordingly in your QuickBooks.
Okay. Does the accounting codes drop down, or?
Yes, the accounting code will drop down.
Okay.
PEX cards. PEX cards are prepaid spending cards. Each area should have 2 or 3 cards. The cards are loaded with funds as needed, and then can be inactivated upon your request. When we order the PEX cards and send them to you, they are inactive, and we will activate them and add balance to it when you're ready. Area admins, so you two have 24-hour access to the PEX website to see spending and balance information. The activating of the cards, deactivating, or adding money are done by MKP USA. And at the end of each month, the areas are responsible for sending basically a PEX reconciliation report to us so that we can reconcile the credit cards and, again, code the expense accordingly. The PEX reconciliation report looks like this. Wow, looks like a lot of information. Looks like it's very daunting. But really, it's actually a relatively simple report to prepare. We've included some detailed instructions on this form, which again is available on the finance homepage on how to complete this form. But it's really a matter of logging into PEX, downloading your cards transactions, pasting them into this form, and then just letting us know what are the categories, what's the accounting code, and then what's the event class. And again, you'll have a drop-down code for the categories.
Where's the accounting code on this?
Under categories.
Oh, under categories. Oh, I got you. There you go. Okay. Got you.
And then we also need to know, when you complete this, do you have a copy of the receipt? This, I judge, will be the most challenging aspect of what you do, is getting the receipts. And I experienced this personally in our area, but we really want to press upon the men, if you're using a PEX card, you've got to send us a copy of the receipt. It's almost an agreement. In lieu of having you to put your own money out of there and submit the receipts, we're going to give you a PEX card. But the agreement is that for everything you spend, for every item that you purchase, you need to provide a copy of that receipt so that we can reconcile it at the end of the month.
Right.
Now, the PEX cards can only be used for purchases. They can't be used to withdraw cash at an ATM, or if you're at a Piggly Wiggly or Kroger's or a Vons and you're buying for groceries, you can't take cash out on top of the transaction itself. It will only let you purchase goods. So let me take a quick break from that and show you the PEX card. So this is the PEX card website. Login details are on our finance homepage. I wanted to just log in and show you what you'll see when you do log in. So here you see a list of all the PEX cards that we've got that we've created. I'm going to go to Heartland. So you'll see here Heartland has 2 cards.
Yes.
And let's say you want us to activate it and add $1,000 to it. We'll just do $100. All I do is click change the status, add $100, and you're up and running. The reason I'm showing you this is to show you how easy and how quick this is done. So that if when you do send me an email, we try to process the request that day. If it's an emergency, we've had a man sitting in Costco that was spending a little bit more than what he had budgeted for. He called us from Costco and said, can you add $100 to our PEX card? And we're able to do that immediately. So it's a quick and easy process.
Okay.
Now, one thing I want to point out here is that when our PEX card, so you can see in here that we currently have a balance of about $12,000 that I could use to distribute to the cards. We fund this via our Chase bank account, and it takes me 5 days to get money in this account. So we try to keep plenty of funds in here, especially during NWTA season, which is right now. The risk is that I exhaust all this, and all of a sudden you come to me, Jim, and say, we need $2,000 for our MOS. I don't have it, and I got to wait 5 days to get it. So what we're asking areas is that after a weekend, when you're done with the PEX card, let us know so that we can basically remove the balance off the card. So like in terms of Heartland, I would go in here and just take away the $100. It zeroes it out and adds it back to the pool. Okay. So that helps keep the pool replenished. So if you don't need the money, let us know. We'll reduce it. And of course, if you do need the money, it's okay. But that's just one thing that you can do to help support us to ensure that we've got plenty of money in the pool when we need it. And of course, we're monitoring this on a weekly basis, and we're adding money as needed. But just want to point that out, that it's just something to be mindful of after a weekend.
Okay.
So we keep talking about our accounting codes, categories. These are the chart of accounts. This is all you'll need to know when or how, in terms of what codes that we were using to apply expense, check requests, deposits. And a link to this is available on our finance homepage. So if you ever get the curiosity at 2 in the morning to find out, hey, what kind of accounting codes are we using? There you go. This is where you can go. But again, a list of these are included in the drop-down menus on the reports that you're going to use. So next, I want to talk about the NWTA payment plan form. So this form was created by an area, and it has since been revised. It's been prodded, poked, dissected, put back together again. And what you're seeing here is the most recent version of what's out there. And I found this to be a very effective tool for us in San Diego. In other areas, I received similar feedback. And so when you have a man that's not paying in full, that's going to be on a payment plan, we encourage you to use this form. It's a PDF form. It's available on the finance homepage, and it's encrypted. It's encrypted because we're actually using credit card information, and we're going to be sending this form via email. So the passcode is 7770, 770, which is also the PIN number for our PEX cards. We like to keep things simple here. So when you first try to open it, it's going to ask you what the password is. It's 7770. It's a PDF form. What I mean by that is that you'll be able to you enter the print name, hit enter, it takes you to the next tab, and all the way down.
Okay.
What we ask is that you make the payment plans equal. So if he owes $400, it's 4 installments of $100 each. If he owes $540 and we can't break that down into 4 equal installments, it's okay to have another installment that's a different amount. It just means that we have to set up a separate payment plan into it. This is very similar to what we had to do prior to unification. At least from my standpoint in San Diego, the credit card processor we used, the only payment plans that I could set up were ones that had equal installments. So if I had a 4th installment that was a different amount, I had to set up a second plan and then put out the target date of when I'm going to withdraw the funds or charge his credit card. So, if at all possible, if you can keep them equal, that simplifies it on our end. So when you're done with this information, you send it to MKP at ignitespot.com, and they will load the payment plans for you and begin charging the credit cards accordingly.
What is type under now how paid? Up at the top there.
Oh, if you paid the deposit, how did he pay? Did he pay via PayPal, or did he give you a check?
Okay.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. In this circumstance, if I paid a deposit of $150, how did I pay? In WTA, or did I give you a check, or did I pay on a local PayPal button? Authorized reduction. So is this a scholarship or a discount? So that's what I mean by type.
Okay.
So in this instance, the man could be getting a $200 diversity scholarship. So I put in $200 and put down type diversity scholarship.
Okay.
Some areas provide, if you if you pay 30 days in advance, you get a 10% discount. So in that case, if it's a $700 initiation fee, the reduction would be $70, and then you would put early bird discount under type.
Mm-hmm. All right.
After the weekend, we need for you to submit this form to us. So this lets us know who received scholarship on the weekend. So if it's a Mexico scholarship or diversity, which are both MKP USA, you'd put down Scott Ryder, and then you'd put down diversity scholarship and the amount. And then any comments you think we need to know. If your local area provides scholarships, or as a scholarship fund, and you're giving scholarships from that fund, again, you just put Scott Ryder and the recipient, and you say just scholarship and the amount, and then MKP USA will move the money from your restricted account, and it'll show up under that NWTA as a release from restrictions.
So in that case, what we're saying is that anything we give through the area account comes from a restricted account and would end up on the sheet of paper.
Correct.
On this form.
On this form, you'll send it to us, and I'll show you what it will look like. So what I'm doing now is logging into QuickBooks. I'm going to just do a quick, brief intro to QuickBooks. I have a much larger, not larger training, but I do spend an hour going over QuickBooks, and we're going to do these trainings next week. So if you have any questions about what I'm doing, feel free to ask them, but be assured that we're going to go over QuickBooks in much greater detail next week.
Okay.
But right now, I just want to give you an example of what a report will look like when you sort it by class. So you get an idea of, okay, what our P&Ls are by class. Then also show you, okay, when you're doing scholarship, how does it show up in your QuickBooks? When you log into QuickBooks, you may get these pop-up that says upgrade available now. Just click remind me later or click ignore.
Right.
Okay. And so when we log into QuickBooks, we're using an enterprise level program. It's actually sitting in a server farm in Sacramento, California. So we're all logging in remotely. In order to do that, we're actually using a gateway called Citrix. So when you log in, you're going to be logging in twice. You're going to be logging into Citrix first. Then after that, you're going to log into QuickBooks. So I've already logged into Citrix. Now I'm actually accessing QuickBooks, and I've logged into QuickBooks. So one thing while it's loading here, I want to make a point of clarification is that Citrix, we have 3 logins for Citrix. We have an admin login that we use in MKP USA. Then we have an MKP East login and an MKP West login. The reason we've created 2 logins for the areas is that when you're in QuickBooks and somebody tries to log in behind you, they're going to bounce you out. So if you find that, hey, I'm in QuickBooks and all of a sudden it just shuts down or craps on you, that's because someone more than likely came in behind you and logged in. And so we were running into an increasing number of folks that were being bounced out. So we created 2 logins. And we're constantly monitoring that. And if we find that we're seeing that more people are being logged in or bounced out because we have more folks logging in at simultaneous times, we can create more logins for Citrix.
Okay.
So when you go into QuickBooks, we've created standardized reports for all the areas. So these are the 3 or 4 reports that you need initially to help you understand what's happening from a financial standpoint with respect to your area. And it provides the information that you need when presenting to your respective councils in terms of how's the area doing to budget, are the variances, what are the variances, what are our ARs? These are folks that are outstanding on payment plans. So in this case, I'm going to pull up Central Plains profit loss. And I'm going to look at the prior year. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is actually the budget to actual. So when each area gave me their budgets, I've loaded it into QuickBooks. And so when you pull this report for yourself, what you'll see is for each class, what did we budget and what are our actuals? Okay?
Okay.
So that's a quick overview of the budget or the budget to actual report. Let me look at the profit loss report. Here we go. So we're looking at Central Great Lakes profit loss for last year. And when you look at it initially, it provides you a total, a consolidated total. To look at it by class, you can do this. And so here you'll see how they have the profit loss for each of the class that we created. Okay. So you see if they're NWTA, IGFT, that's how we're recording, and that's why letting us know what the accounting code is, and more importantly, the class and event knows. So we know which event to code that expense and revenue to.
Right.
Okay. So let me see if I can find an example. Okay. So when I talked about the scholarships earlier, what you'll see is when we release it from restrictions, you're going to see it on this line here. And I apologize if it's small. I can't increase the size of this within QuickBooks. But it'll show up here. So in this case, $215.50 was released via scholarships for the Colorado area. And then you'll see it show up under the corresponding NWTA. So if they had, say, $500 in scholarships that were released for the May, it would show up in here and release from restrictions $500 for that respective NWTA. Okay, great. I think I got it, but just in case, tell me the whole thing all over again. I wasn't paying attention, I wasn't listening. Everything I've talked about is on this finance homepage. And again, let's go to that page.
I've been on it once or twice or 3 times or 4
Okay.
5 6 7.
So let's take a quick look at this. So first thing you'll see here is the contact information for the Scots.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're starting out, you're probably going to have 1,001 questions. Feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call or email us. That's what we do. That's what we're here for, is to support you. And if it means that we walk you through your deposit report 4 or 5 times, that's fine. This is what we love doing. I personally need to be told something 6 times before it sets in. So I know that people can get frustrated with me, but knowing that about myself, I assure you, I do not get frustrated if you're calling me a 6, 7, or 8 time, asking me, hey, how do I do this again?
I appreciate that.
We do financial powwows as well as these trainings.
Right.
This link here will provide access to a folder. There's all of our trainings are online, including this video. Below that, we provide information on Chase Bank, as well as where to mail checks. We have protocols for making PayPal buttons. There's a link here. And so when doing PayPal buttons, I will work in coordination with your local IT or a web guru and creating the PayPal buttons and loading them onto their websites.
You're the man, huh?
I am the man.
All right.
We've also provided some additional links and resources for each area. If you ever need to know what our tax ID number is, or you want to look at our audits for the past 3 years or 990 filings, we provide a link to that information here.
Oh, okay.
How much does a leader get paid? You click here, and it shows you the current leader structure, where each man gets paid, as well as what the support fees are for each training.
Mm-hmm.
Credit cards. So when we set up payment plans, we're developing a system right now where if a man makes a successful payment, you'll get an email saying this payment was received. If the payment was declined, again, these are folks that are on payment plans, IgniteSpot will automatically run the credit card a second time. If it's declined a second time, then they will send you an email letting you know. And then you or your team, or the enrollment team, or whoever's working with you, can pick up the phone and call the man and obtain his correct information. Sometimes the expiration date changes. Sometimes if it's a debit card, they forget to load money on the account so that to cover the actual payment itself, whatever the reason may be.
Right.
And if you want to view your area's payment declines, sort of like you can click on this form, and all the declines are listed here.
Mm-hmm.
So for a reference standpoint. And again, down here, we've got our finance systems credentials area. So the logins for QuickBooks, Bill.com, PEX, Enhanced Payment Gateway, PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
Login, password information are down there. On the right side of the page, we've got links to some key information. If you have questions about scholarships, I've heard about the Diversity Scholarship. What is that? Mm-hmm. Or I have a man in my area that wants to know more about the Young Warrior Scholarship, which provides support for young warriors that want to staff a weekend. In our many powwows that we've had, and we do once a month, next one's on March 10th, we get a number of ideas from the areas in terms of what they're doing to improve revenue or reduce their expenses. And so we capture all that information in this document as a resource for you at some point in the future. If you guys are thinking about ways that you can, hey, what can we do to raise money? Or are there some other things that we can do to reduce our expenses? Here's some ideas about what other areas are doing. We've also got some fundraiser ask templates. Again, some other tools that you could use for your respective area. I've also included a benchmark study that was done in 2013. To give you an idea, if you want to know how do my expenses compare to other areas, and it's fascinating. And I just use it to sort of as a benchmark, gauge where we're at with, compared to other areas.
Right.
And if I find another, what it also produced for me is that I found one area was actually spending less in MOS that we were. So I could reach out to that area financial coordinator and say, can you give me guidance on what you're doing? And through that process, we've actually come up with a couple of methods, and it's going to be in our expense reducing ideas, on what you could do to help reduce your expenses from an MOS standpoint. We had 2 men that actually provided great guidance, 2 men that have been on MOS for a long time. One of them's a chef, and provided guidance in terms of what you could do to provide appropriate, healthy, hearty meals for the weekend, but do it without, blowing your wad, so to speak. Finance policies and all the finance forms that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Question, and maybe I'm too early. You keep going. I'll come back to it. It has to do with payment plans.
Okay.
So we want to set up a payment plan for a man who doesn't have a credit card and would be paying us by check, say.
Mm-hmm.
What I know that we want to try to restrict the number of payments and things like that and try to get the money in. How do we report that, or do we report it separately to you guys?
So we discourage post-dated checks.
Right.
Because technically, legally, they're not legal.
Right.
A post-dated check.
Right.
So, but I understand there's some areas and some men that don't use credit cards and they need to go on a payment plan. So they will give you post-dated checks. Those need to be managed locally. So what that looks like is I have a little tickler on my desk that I put the checks in, and when the next check is ready to be deposited, I take it, deposit it at Chase ATM, send in my deposit report, and that's how I manage it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I know that we want, at least on the payment plan, using a credit card. The goal is to try to get everything paid within 90 days or 4 payments, as I remember the card, the way it's set up.
Correct.
All right. Is that what we're also trying to do with the checks, whether it's post-dated or not?
It's up to you, the local area.
Okay.
What we have found, and this goes back to our presentation on conscious collections.
Right.
The rate of success, if you will, goes up dramatically if the payment plan is 4 payments or less. So that's why we put the 4 payment out there.
Yeah. Real quick, I know you were going to put that. I can go to the finance area and go back to that presentation, right? The handouts and such?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because I want to copy that off. I'm going to need that.
Okay. So questions. Some of the frequently asked questions are viewed here. How much money did our NWTA make? You can find that out by looking in QuickBooks, like what we just did a few minutes ago, where you can go into QuickBooks, pull up your area's respective report, sort it by class, make sure the time periods are appropriate. I usually do the current fiscal year. And then you'll see the profit and loss by event, by training. I've mentioned before when we're talking about our check requests and expense reimbursements that it takes 2 weeks. There is an option for men to sign up for direct deposit, and that decreases the turnaround time dramatically. So instead of 2 weeks, you're looking at a week or less. And so we encourage all men, in fact, many of our leaders have already been set up on this, is to go on direct deposit.
Oh, okay.
How much is left on my PEX card? I gave you an example or showed you how to log into PEX. And from there, you can actually see all the cards that are outstanding. In the search field, you just put in Heartland or you put in San Diego, and it'll pull up the PEX cards for your respective area. And there you can see, okay, what's our current available balance? You'll also be able to log in and see what transactions have transpired if you're interested in knowing that information as well. Did our invoice get paid? This is also bill.com. So let me take a quick break from here. I'm going to log into bill.com. And I'm going to search for a vendor. I'm going to put in Unity. Oops. So here's a vendor for San Diego. We've got a weekend coming up. They called yesterday. This is a true story. Want to know what's the status of our check. So I came in here and I could see the invoice. And you'll see here, hey, this looks familiar. Here's our check request form. So I filled it out and said we need to pay them $3,000, which is the balance due for NWTA site rental.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that it's been approved and it's been paid. So I can go down to payments. Oh, here's $3,000 payment. Log in here. And I see here, okay, it was processed on February 17th. So that's the date of the check. So it was mailed out February 17th. And we'll put in here, or the system does it, when it's expected to arrive by. So last night I was able to log in and say, oh, the check was mailed on the 17th. You're going to get it by Friday the 20th.
Okay.
Great.
In this particular case, you knew the 3,000 even before the NWTA
Yes.
occurred.
Yes.
And so you made your check request early.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So the check requests are ideal, again, for those expenses that haven't yet been incurred, but you know the amount. So it's site rental, could be P.O. box,
Right.
rental for a lodge. And then I also see down here that we mailed them a check for $950 that hasn't cleared yet. And so if they ever ask me, hey, what's the status of the $950 check? I can go into the payment information and say, well, we mailed it on the 6th. You should have received it by the 11th. If you don't have it, let me know. I can always void the payment and reissue a new check.
Right. Okay.
And in this case, we've asked them, would you be willing to go up on e-payments? And they said no. So we're mailing them by checks. But if they said yes, this is what you'll see. You can literally click this button, set up e-payments, and then send invite. And it will send them an email inviting them to set up an e-payment.
Mm.
Process is painless and simple.
All right.
Let's see here. The next question is, where can I go to find who paid what and how? And there's two methods. One would be QuickBooks, and the second would be PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to find out who made a payment, like staff fees that we're getting at the last minute, I can go into PayPal, download the history for the last week, and then sort it in Excel by San Diego's payment button, staff payment button, and it'll show me who's made payments in the last couple of days. If it's been beyond that time frame, I can go into QuickBooks, pull up the report, look for that particular weekend or that event in training, and then double click on participant or staff revenue. When I do that, it'll provide a list of all the men that have made payments, staff payments for that weekend.
All right.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So any questions?
I like those pictures there.
Well, yeah, we're the finance team. I think we have stiff upper lips, pins in our pockets, we don't have any fun. Yeah, we like to have a lot of fun in what we do and inject that into what we do. So it's Scott McGregor and myself. We're the finance team. We are readily available. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, we're here. So in many ways, we're your best friend, your psychologist, whatever it may be when it comes to finance matters for the area. So
You're being mighty generous, Scott. One question back on the finance page. How do I know, or how do I get in to the restricted area? The different things under the restricted area.
You mean this area right here?
Yeah.
It automatically loads. So if you were to go to the finance homepage, that should be pre-populated.
Okay, what you're saying is just hit log on and find my log on number, or?
No. When you log into MKP Connect and then go to the finance homepage.
Right.
So to get there, so this is my homepage in MKP Connect. There's my ugly mug, all my information. Then up here is a box that says MKP information links.
Right, I've done that. Yeah, I know how to get to the homepage for you guys.
Okay.
What I'm asking is, though, in that restricted area right there, credential secured area, how do I get in to look at different things in that?
So when you go to the finance homepage, you're not seeing this right here?
Let me see. If I can do it here. Well, I think I am, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But if I'm not, I'll let you know. Let me just do that offline
Okay.
and see how it goes. I noticed, though, that when you went to get your, we're looking at the IDs for the different areas, Heartland didn't have one on that list.
Yep. I will take care of that after the call.
Okay. And the other thing I want to make sure is PayPal buttons, our IT guy needs to contact you.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll coordinate the designing of the button itself, or just the code itself behind the ends, and then I'll send him the payment PayPal button code that he can then load onto the website.
Put it on the website.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are going to be 1,000 other questions, Scott.
No problem. I expect it. The only time that I get worried is when I don't hear from you.
Don't hear. Well, don't worry. You'll hear
That's
something.
what scares me. So, all right, we'll stop.
Anyway.